Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you to the staff of the New York State Attorney General's office for also being here today. This is the first time we're having this kind of a meeting at the office, so it's really good to see everybody here. So I guess in the modern day, the first announcement is about cell phones. If you could put your cell phone on vibrate or silent, which I'm about to do myself, that would be great. So I hope you all have a copy of the agenda, the short agenda for today's program. Now, I just want to say, so we're going to have this public discussion, right, with all of us here. But then we will also have time for those of you who have individual cases and you want to talk one-on-one. We will also have time for that later on today, where we can you can like sit in privacy, in another room and talk to a staff member from the Attorney General's office and from TWA one-on-one about any cases you might have. Now let me introduce you all to our special guest for the day. To my right is Terry Gerstein, who is the Chief of the Labor Bureau of the New York State Attorney General's office. And I have to say, through our work, through all the years we've been organizing, Terry is one of the government officials we have known for a really long time, and who's always took such a genuine interest in the conditions of taxi drivers. And through all the years that we've worked with her, which have been over 10 years now, right? Because from the Department of Labor and even when many people were not interested in our issues because drivers are not considered employees under the law, right? They're independent contractors. But I have to say, we're really fortunate to have someone like Terry in labor enforcement, who's one of the people that just understood that workers are workers and all workers have a right to be protected. So I'm really honored to welcome you to our office today. So I'm going to let Terry introduce her colleagues from the Labor Bureau who are with us today.
Great. So thank you for coming today and for giving us the opportunity to speak with all of you. The people who are here with me today are the people who've been working on these cases within our office and also within the Taxi and Limousine Commission. Immediately to my right is Tricia Kukalik, who's special counsel in the Labor Bureau and has been really at the forefront of working on these cases. And then to her right is David Ross, who is, and Jason Gonzalez, and David Ross has been, both of them have been working within our office. They've been designated special assistant attorney general within our office to work with us on these cases, and they also work in the Taxi and Limousine Commission as attorneys there. David spearheading the lease cap enforcement unit. So everyone here, all of us, I think, are very, very committed to trying to make sure that the law is complied with and that the drivers' rights as workers and the legal rights that people have are respected. I don't know if you wanted to do more introduction or if I should just go right into talking about our work. Okay, great. So what we're going to do, I'll start out talking a little bit about the Attorney General's office in general, because I imagine many of you may not be familiar with the work of the Attorney General's office. I certainly was not until I started working there. But the Attorney General, our Attorney General in New York is Eric Schneiderman, who is just re-elected. The Attorney General is the top lawyer in New York State and is often called the people's lawyer. And there are several different roles of the Attorney General, including bringing criminal cases in certain instances and defending the state sometimes when it's sued. But one of the principal roles of the Attorney General is in protecting people's rights in a variety of ways, standing up for the people of the state of New York and making sure that the rules are applied equally to everyone, no matter who they are. There's a broad range of issues that our office gets involved in, and I'll mention a few that might be of interest in addition to the specific issues we're talking about today. Our office does a lot of work protecting consumers. So when people have some kind of, they buy something and they've been cheated by a business in some way, or a business is is repeatedly selling a defective product or advertising a sale that's kind of bogus. A variety of types of consumer complaints our office handles, and there's actually a conciliation service where if you have a consumer complaint, they'll try and resolve it and mediate it and get a resolution fairly quickly. We have a civil rights bureau that enforces the anti-discrimination laws, which in New York prohibit discrimination on a wide range of bases, including race, religion, national origin, Trisha, help me out here, sex,
age, disability, sexual orientation, military status, family status.
So there's a variety of different protections in these regards, and some of the work the Civil Rights Bureau has been doing in the past several years that might be of interest to you is that the office has been focusing, one area of focus has been on language access, trying to make sure that that law enforcement agencies and government agencies and police offices, for example, are fully accessible to people regardless of language, and that they have adequate interpretation services in place so that they can appropriately serve the communities that they're located in. They've also done a lot of work involving job discrimination against people who may have a criminal history. They've done work, they issued a report on stop and frisk, on the results of arrests that happened when people were stopped by the stop and frisk policy. So they've been involved in, a wide range of different kinds of issues. Our office has also done work involving the mortgage crisis, where people suing the banks that basically were, played a large role in creating the situation, and our office has been funding a lot of legal services providers to help people with those issues. We also have a healthcare bureau that when people's health insurance is not paying for things that it should be paying for, the healthcare bureau often can help with that and has a hotline as well. Our bureau, the bureau that I head, is the Labor Bureau. And as a general matter, we bring cases that are protecting the rights of employees. Generally, we focus on very low-wage workers in industries where people are paid at or below the minimum wage, people don't get overtime. To give you a few examples of sort of the bread and butter types of cases that we usually handle, that's sort of the bulk of our work. Recently, within the past year, we've had a lot of investigations that have settled a number of cases involving fast food employers. Settlement with an airport contractor that was paying sky caps as low as $3.90 an hour a year ago, which is way, way, way below the minimum wage. Even though these guys get tips, there's a tip to minimum wage, it was even way below that. And we got almost $1 million in a settlement for those workers. We also brought cases, we had one case involving one of the larger car wash chains, owned by two different people, Lage and McGallis. You guys probably deal with car washes a fair amount, but these car washes were again paying people way below minimum wage, and so we got a pretty sizable settlement with them that provided not only about $2 million in compensation for the workers, but also penalties to the state. And we've also brought, another thing that we do that's a little unusual is we've brought a lot of criminal cases in the past few years. Certain labor violations are actually criminal, and when people don't list all of their employees on their tax forms, that's a criminal violation. Or if they don't have workers' comp insurance for 6 or more employees, that too is a criminal violation. And total non-payment of workers, which we've seen like some home health agencies or restaurants didn't pay workers at all for a month, 2 months of work, that is a criminal violation. So that gives you a little bit of an overview of the kinds of cases that the Attorney General's office does in general, and also the Labor Bureau in particular. Our goal when we do cases, and this is sort of segueing into this work and the lease cap work that we have been doing, our goal generally is to try to change practices in an industry. If you have an industry where there's high rates of violation and where, in typical labor case, the employer, but in this case the companies are violating the law, a lot of them in a systematic way, and our goal is to change practices. It's to change practices not only of that company, but also of others in the industry. We want to deter or prevent violations from happening and send a message to people in the industry that they have to respect the law, they have to respect the rights of the people who work for them. And so that is always our primary goal, is bringing about change in the industry so that in the future, people's rights are respected and there's more compliance. And of course, part of that as well is to try and get restitution for the people who are affected and who have been, underpaid or somehow cheated out of amounts of money. How we got involved in this work is that shortly after I became bureau chief, we really, although taxi drivers in New York are typically not employees and are not covered by all of the labor and employment laws like minimum wage and overtime, we really wanted to do something because it is such an important workforce that plays such an important role in New York City and faces a lot of challenges. And so I actually had reached out to Beta B and asked, what are the issues? Is there a way that our office can be helpful and relevant in improving the working conditions for taxi drivers? And she raised the issue of lease cap enforcement as a high priority, that there were certain places where the amounts there were extra charges that were being charged that were more than was permitted under the lease cap rules, and that historically there really hadn't been enforcement in this area in any broader systematic way. And so we started looking at it, and it was really fortuitous because at that point the Tax and Limousine Commission had also decided to take this on as an issue and start trying to be systematic and think about how to enforce these laws and how to be proactive and make sure that drivers' rights in this regard were respected. And so we began to collaborate with the TLC, both on particular cases, as well as just in talking about the rules. We did some joint outreach together at where was it? It was at Woodside? At TLC's Woodside facility one morning, just interviewing a lot of different drivers while the cabs were being inspected to try and find out what kinds of violations they were having. And a little over a year ago, we actually signed an official agreement called the Memorandum of Understanding between the TLC and the Attorney General's office to work together in lease cap enforcement. And so it's been a very good collaboration because our office really has the ability we're lawyers, we issue subpoenas, we bring people in to take sworn testimony from them. We always rely on the cooperation of witnesses, workers, drivers who are willing to tell us what happened to them, to know what's going on. But it's been a really wonderful collaboration, very, very fruitful. And so far, we've had 2 cases that have been resolved, which I think Tricia will tell about in more detail. We have, there's more that's currently underway that we can't talk about because we generally don't talk about ongoing investigations. But we also are really interested, in addition to the lease cap issue, in hearing what other kinds of potential cases there might be or what other problems our office, again, we're lawyers, so that's what we do, and we can help with certain kinds of problems. We can't help with everything, but there might be some kinds of problems that we would be able to help with if there are systematic violations of the law in certain ways. So we are eager to hear not just about the lease cap issues, but also about other ongoing potential legal illegalities that are happening in your work. So I'll pass it on to Tricia to talk about the particular cases that we worked on.
Thank you so much. So there are 2 cases that we recently resolved, and we have another significant investigation that's going on that we're hoping to be able to resolve before too long. And those may have been ones that you've heard about through the union because I noticed they were announced by email. But the first, not the first investigation we started, but the first investigation we resolved involved 4 garages, one of which is close by. So it was 28th Street Management, Downtown Taxi Management, Tunnel Taxi Management, and Woodside Management, and both are part of NYTWA, owned in part or in whole by Gene Friedman. And the way we do our investigations, we issued subpoenas, we took some sworn testimony, and we had access to all their records. We also spoke with a number of drivers. The other investigation that we did that settled in August was with SLS Jet, and that the same case, the same sort of method where we got their records, spoke to drivers, brought their employees in and took their sworn testimony. And the issue in both cases was lease overcharges, or charges like extra charges that were being charged to drivers for leases that got the weekly rate above the TLC allowed rate. And so it's not, it's not every extra charge that someone was charged, but it was the TLC has a limit on how much can be charged per week. And if the charges got above that, then that was a violation of the lease cap, and that was what we were focusing on. What we, as Terry mentioned, what we really wanted to see is two things. One, restitution or money back for people who were overpaid or paid an amount above the lease cap. And second, compliance going forward, or making sure the employers don't do this again. And not just these employers, but others, to know that this is an important issue, this is an issue that our office is looking at, this is an issue the TLC is looking at, and we want to make sure that this kind of stuff stops. So we reached 2 monetary settlements. So we reached 2 settlements in which they paid both money to our office to distribute to drivers and fines to the TLC for their violation. But another big part of our settlement agreements was basically putting some policies and practices in place to make sure that the violations don't continue and that the overcharges don't continue. So, for example, in the agreements that they signed with the office, they agreed to train managers and dispatchers. They agreed to give us, I think, quarterly reports of, with all of their data about what people are being charged and who, so they give us these spreadsheets. As to one of the companies, we have access from our own computers to their computer records, so we can monitor their computer, what's going on with them, going directly into their documents. We also have a right to make unannounced visits to the garages, and we have done that recently to one of the places. It's a way of us seeing for ourselves what's going on. If we've heard that there are ongoing problems, we have a right, and we'll avail ourselves of the right to go out there and talk to people ourselves, look at the records ourselves, check the files, check the computers, and just see what's going on. The employers also agreed to comply with the law going forward. They're obligated to do that anyway, but they agreed to it again. And they agreed not to retaliate, which is to take any sort of adverse action or bad action against someone because they came to us or because the employer believed they came to us. So, those are for us as important as the monetary part of the case, because those are ways of really making sure, giving us a mechanism to make sure that they don't just pay the money and then continue on until they get caught again. There's also some posters, which hopefully, if you worked at any of these 5 garages I just mentioned, hopefully you've seen some of these things, the posters. As far as what the monetary resolution is, I guess, depending on if people have specific questions, it might be easier to do one-on-one after, or, yeah. We really considered very carefully what the facts were, what, we thought was a resolution we could achieve that would ensure going forward that we could see compliance, and also that they did have to pay a penalty, and that was something that was important. That was important as part of the resolution.
Yeah, I could just add as well that before these cases and before the TLC started the lease cap enforcement unit, there really was no enforcement at all. And whatever violations occurred happened with complete impunity, and there was no one out there trying to monitor the practices, send a message, change their practices, get any restitution at all. And so I think we're all very committed to trying to make sure that going forward that there is compliance in this industry, and that, as I said at the beginning, is a focus and has always been a focus of our work in this regard.
wanted to say something. And actually, we should allow the presentations to finish before we, so we are going to have time where everybody, different people can make, comments and ask questions. But I wanted, from the union side, I wanted to give a little bit of background. So, years ago, the TLC used to have what they called an ombudsman. And I'm sorry, I should introduce, this is Liz Wagner, who is also an attorney in the Labor Bureau at the Attorney General's office. So years ago, the TLC used to have what they called an ombudsman. So this was a person, I'm talking about like up until about 1996, 1997, they had this one person who only issue you could bring to them was, your deposit. If the garage or broker didn't give you your deposit back, you could bring it to this one person who worked there. And within a few months, he wasn't there for very long. They closed the position, they fired the guy, they closed up, they never hired anybody else. And for years, when we would know of overcharges, and especially after 2006, 2007, the overcharges got worse and worse, like across the board, right? We had nobody to turn to. And, we kept going to the TLC, but there were no prosecutors, there was nobody for us to file complaints to. And unfortunately, there was a really bad ruling at the state courts when the union, we worked with attorneys to file an action with a group of the members at state court, but as the state court had ruled that, well, if the TLC has a particular rule about the lease cap, you have to file your case only through the TLC. And so we were not able to file like a class action suit in the state courts. So, there was a lot of desperation for us because there were no doors that were opened up. And, I know we all like to believe that the law is about justice, but it's not. It's about power. There's a lot of unfairness to it. And we were not able to find any place within the courts that would take our grievances seriously. I completely hear what you're saying, brother, because we saw that across the board. We all knew SLS Jet was overcharging. We all knew that the late fee was a bogus fee, and it was hard-earned money from drivers. And it's not only one overcharge of $10 and you're revoked 3 years, you can't even reapply for your hack license. But if you have 3 overcharges, it could be 50 cents each, $1.50 in total of 3 different cases. A taxi driver's license is revoked and you're out for 3 years. So I know it feels incredibly unfair that we have been watching these garages overcharged for all these years and we couldn't even get a damn complaint filed, let alone ever have our day in court. And so, given that very desperate situation of, that's also the reason why SLS Jet continued to overcharge for so many years. It's why Friedman continued to overcharge for so many years. It's why we've seen overcharges at a number of other places, because there was no sheriff in town to say there is a law and we're going to hold you to that law, right? So I want to say to all of you, we do want to talk more about how this, maybe if there's a formula to how the settlements were come upon, right? The numbers, I know you guys have lots of questions, so do we. But I do want to say, we're really proud of you who came forward with your cases, because you may not feel it, and you may not fully realize it, but you are the first generation of taxi drivers. Because of your courage to come forward, we now have a lease caps enforcement unit. We now have a partnership between the Attorney General's office, the highest ranking law officer in the entire state of New York, an elected official, and the Taxi and Limousine Commission, a city agency, to work together on issues just about overcharges to taxi drivers. And believe me, brothers and sisters, we're the only city of taxi drivers in this entire country that has it. Is it enough? No. It is not enough. But is it a beginning? Yes. We finally have a beginning after many years of struggle, you know? And so we see the settlements as also a signal to garages and, you know, to the agents, to other corporations in this industry, that at least for the first time, they are being watched. That something is going to get done. And when the union is out there, I mean, you guys saw, we had so many protests. And I was telling, you know, Terry and Tricia and David earlier, he tried to hose us down with water. You know, we've been threatened, you know, they physically tried to attack us in the same way that inside, I remember when I went to Woodside Management and it's set up so it's like riot control, not more than 2 drivers can be there at a time. Meanwhile, behind that partition window, the dispatchers and management have how much room for themselves? And drivers can barely walk once you open the door. They set it up, we know that, so they can intimidate drivers. They can make sure that drivers don't have enough room to gather together so you can't talk to each other and compare notes on how you're being overcharged. And so you can organize yourselves to go and file complaints, right? And they have cameras, and they use the cameras to intimidate people. They're the ones who need cameras on them, but they make drivers feel like we're the ones that need to be watched. We know that the same way that they intimidate drivers inside these spaces, you know, they've done that to everybody else, you know, who has tried to hold them to the law. And so for that reason, it's all the more, you know, amazing how much courage you guys have had to come forward with your complaints. Don't be disheartened, you know, that you haven't seen enough. Keep your pride that because of you we are seeing something at all. You know, and that's also why we're thankful for the Attorney General's office, you know, who you know, I mean, we went to the TLC for years. They didn't do anything. You know, I want to be honest about that because that's just a fact. Then when David Yaski, when he was chairman at the time, you know, agreed to set up this lease caps enforcement unit, it took them some time. They had, you know, then they hired prosecutors. You know, I know that's how, you know, David Ross had come in, and they started to open that up. And then we got the Driver's Bill of Rights passed, so now they have to put the posters up, you know, at the garages and brokerages and all of that. So, you know, but I also want to be honest, you know, and I said this to the TLC, and, you know, David knows this, not to make you uncomfortable. I said it to his bosses, you know, said it to city council members. We know that this partnership between the Attorney General's office and the TLC was really important for us because we could not take the chance that the next chairperson who came in would close up that prosecution unit and use the lawyers from the lease caps enforcement unit to only enforce against taxi drivers instead of protecting drivers. And so that's why for us the relationship with the Attorney General's office has been so important. So I wanted to, you know, to really give you guys that background so you know that in terms of the law, what we've been fighting, in terms of the politics, what we've been fighting, and in terms of the industry, what we've been facing. And even though you may not realize this about yourselves, like you are giants. Without you, none of this happens. For the few people that can't have the courage to come forward and file your complaints, that's why all the attorneys had to go to work. Because you came forward. Without you, nothing moves. And so if we want to have better settlements, we want to have more investigations, you have to keep coming forward. We also got passed in 2012 a rule in the TLC rulebook about retaliation. That the garage and broker and medallion owner cannot retaliate. They cannot punish any driver. So once you file a complaint, they cannot retaliate against you. They cannot punish you for filing a complaint about their wrongdoing. You know, that also was the first time in this industry across this country that a rule like that got passed to protect drivers. And we've been working with the drivers in Austin, in Philadelphia, in other cities with the National Taxi Workers Alliance to get these similar rules passed. So drivers across this country can have these protections, just like all workers should have them in every industry that people labor in. Understanding what our power is as drivers, and understanding what our responsibility is as drivers and as the union, right? So I want you guys to have that in mind as we move this conversation forward.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to give sort of the current state of affairs on how the TLC treats lease cap complaints that come in. We treat all our complaints very seriously right now, and drivers have the opportunity to make complaints by dialing 311, by using the TLC's website and submitting complaints there. And we read and review every single complaint, and every single person who makes a complaint gets a call back from mostly me as the TLC prosecutor for the lease cap unit. So we take all our complaints seriously. Drivers have complained over the past couple of years, a variety of things. Some of them we've already talked about. But lease cap violations, not being paid on time, charged fees that you shouldn't be charged, drivers that aren't receiving their security deposits on time. We take all those complaints seriously, and as Ms. Desai said, I encourage you to make those complaints, because without you telling us, we don't know about it, and we can't help you for things that we don't know. So we take all of these complaints seriously, and if you do have specific complaints, specific issues to you, we can talk about it afterwards, and I'll be here. I'll pass out business cards even if you don't feel comfortable talking about it this second. We have a phone conversation. But if there are any questions...
I have a question. What's the process when someone files a lease cap complaint with your...
Sure. So if you file a complaint, it lands on my desk within a couple of days, usually the next day. I do the research based on what's written on the complaint. Sometimes the complaints don't come through perfectly, but I read what's there, and I try to do an investigation before we call the drivers. I then speak to the drivers and investigate that way. I compare what the drivers are saying to tripped records that are available to us. And then if I believe that the driver has a viable complaint, whether it's a lease cap violation or some other TLC rule violation that's against the taxi owner, the garage, possibly even another driver, we try to set up settlement conferences for the most part. Our goals, as Terry said before, one of our goals is to make sure that this bad behavior doesn't happen again, but also our goal is to get the drivers the money back that they believe that they're owed. So we try as much as we can to resolve our issues outside of court, which includes money back to the drivers and fines paid. Because once we go to court, we don't have any guarantees as to how much money the drivers get back. So I'd say a large percentage of our cases get settled without having to go to court. That's also helpful to you all as drivers, because then you don't have to come to the TLC and testify in court. It saves you a lot of time, it saves a lot of resources, and it allows the TLC to process even more complaints that are coming in from drivers about the garages. So once the complaint is settled, if it's settled out of court, usually the driver has his money within a couple of weeks of the settlement being signed. If it goes to court, then it's up to the judge on whether they order the money back to the driver and whether they find the drivers, the owners of the cabs, guilty. In complaints, sometimes they're resolved within a month, depending on how the investigation goes. It can take a couple of months, but once you complain, you will hear from us quickly, and we'll resolve it as fast as we can.
I have a question for this reason. I filed a complaint in September about...
Sir, so if you have a specific question about your complaint, I'll talk to you after. It doesn't have to be in front of everybody. Is it a general complaint about something I was saying?
Yeah, because the broker doesn't give me, the credit card money. That was in September. I filed the complaint. They said they're going to send him
Okay, so we'll talk about it after.
I asked about it. He answered me, he said, no. Well, how are we going to get my money? Did they go to court? That was in September. And they haven't got anything else.
Okay, I'll talk to you after about your specific complaint, okay?
Let me just call on I see a couple.
Balance check.
I have like one question.
Yeah.
I paid like $5,000 down payment to the broker in 2011. And then when the car was paid off, so he charged me again for the new car and he charged me almost like for 2 months. And then I went like 2 weeks ago and I asked him for my deposit. I asked him that did it just $4,000 in the car price or what you did? I didn't get my money
Sir.
back deposit.
It sounds like you're asking a specific question about your complaint. I'm happy to talk to you at after, because some of these questions don't apply to everybody, but I'm happy to talk to you about your complaint after.
Well,
Okay?
I think, well, if I could just say,
You didn't pay me back.
so 1 second. Okay, so first of all, anyone who let's just talk about the process. Anyone who has a comment, if you could just raise your hand, I will call on you. If you could just wait to speak until I call on you. Okay? So this brother first, and then this brother. Okay, I'm going to take 2 people at a time. But one thing, just in terms of conversation. So I know people might have specific cases. We will have time if you want to file a complaint. Again, we will have time to take your intake, after the public meeting is over. But also, I think it would be helpful just to hear some general. Again, obviously, you're not going to. You guys won't be able to comment on a specific case because, you would have to investigate before you take an opinion on it. But I think if maybe there's some general questions that could reflect what rules are in place that the drivers can, that do protect drivers. If the rules are silent on certain things, we see, if you could comment on that as well. Let's say, I think there are many drivers who do want to have their day in court, right? They don't want to see the case get settled. Even if they have their day in court, it means maybe the judge is going to rule against them. But still, they want to have their day in court. They want to be able to, go through the process and see where it lands, see what a judge would decide based on the rules. And then secondly, correct us if we're wrong, but we would think logically that if it does go in front of the judge, the rules do say that the judge has to order restitution back to the driver, right? Money back to the driver. And we would think that if we went before a judge, the likelihood of the money you're going to be ordered to go back to you might be more compared to the case that's settled. I think that's like a common feeling. So maybe as attorneys, that's something that you can comment on. Is that true? How do you make the decision? Especially because given drivers cannot go to state court with these cases, and TLC complaint is the only opportunity we have to make sure we're heard before a judge. Just comment on it, and then we'll come to you. Just respond to that.
Sure. As to the question about drivers wanting their day in court, I've heard drivers say that to me before, but what drivers really need to understand is that the formalities of court, the end result is really no different. There might be a slightly smaller fine if a settlement is reached, but generally, when there's a settlement, the amount of money that the driver is going to get is going to be the same amount that the drivers would get if the judge were to order it. What's also important is that if it does go in front of a judge, the judge might order less money than what was offered in the settlement. So it really goes both ways. If drivers ever wanted to see settlement agreements that happen, that's available to drivers. They can see on paper the penalties that the garages or taxi owners are paying. And to me, that it speeds up the process so we can handle all of the driver complaints that come in.
I could add something. We think our cases are great, but then the other side has their perspective and their evidence that they bring in. And so there is always, even with a very strong case, there's always some risk when you go before a court. And the other issue that comes up, I think, a lot in regular civil cases, I'm not sure how applicable it is here, is just that if you get a settlement, you get the money much more quickly, whereas a court process can take a considerable amount of time, and people don't have access to the money in the meantime. So that's, that issue of cases, I think there is something powerful about being able to speak and tell your story and being able to confront someone who has treated you badly, and I think that is a very powerful thing. But just to give you background, the situation in which most cases settle is not unique. But in most legal areas, most criminal cases end up in a plea bargain, not in a trial. So that issue of most cases settling is kind of uniform within the legal system.
I would like to know if bound check is legal, because I work for downtown taxi booking. When you can do anything, but when I have $600 to give me and part of the deposit, they give me a check. When I deposit the check in my bank, the check was bound, and I have to pay for that. When I came back to them, I have to pray them to give me that money, and after that, they make decision. They don't give me good car. They give me now. They penalize me. They get more money in me, and they say to me they will not give me good car.
Did that happen recently, or?
Happened right recently.
Yeah.
Recently.
So we definitely like to talk to you after about that specifically, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely not, if someone owes you money and they give you a check that bounces,
The
they
general
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, it's not.
Is bound check? I didn't know that. If bound check is legal, they give me
No.
a check.
I mean, that's like just giving you like a piece of paper, right? They're not giving
No,
you
after
anything.
that, to give me back that money, I have to pass time, and it's like
Yeah.
back then. In
Yeah.
end, I pay the bank, and they start for that.
Yeah, no, definitely it's not, I mean, if someone owes you money, they pay you with a bounce check, that is not meeting their legal obligations. And it's also, if people pay with bounce checks on purpose, like that is actually a crime.
Purpose, it's a
Right.
purpose. Because if you give when I work for them,
Yeah,
so they say you could get the money, they don't permit me to get the money back. So when I come and say I need money now, I pass several days working, I need money.
right,
To apply for the check, 2 days.
right,
If I got 2 days to apply for a check, when I come, you give me a check that you work on it for 2 days.
yeah.
And when I go back to the bank, $600 bounce that put my credit down, and they got some money on me. And many days after.
And did they give you cash in the end, or did they
No,
give you a new check?
at the end.
At the end,
At the end, they give me cash. But
Yeah.
a
I know you
few
had to go
days
back.
after,
Yeah.
And I have
Yeah.
to pray them and raise
Yeah.
them and everything.
no, I think it's an ongoing problem, and one thing we do want to ask people who are here, who work at one of the four Goneida garages that I mentioned, 28th Street, downtown, Tunnel, or Woodside. If you're having problems with bounce checks, or not getting your credit card payment, or getting a debit card and getting fees, or getting a debit card that doesn't have cash, we're looking at that actively right now, and we would really like to talk to you individually about that situation. So the kind of situation you're describing is one that we're looking at right now, and we really would like to speak with people after if that's the situation you're in.
Can I just add to that? I mean, the debit cards, the rules say that you don't have to, they can only give you the debit card if you agree to take it. Now, what we've been finding is there are many drivers where because the checks bounced, they weren't getting the cash, and then the checks bounced. So people were feeling desperate that, okay, the only way I'm going to get my money is to at least get it through a debit card. That's the only reason people were taking that. But that's not the same as you willingly saying you want to be paid in a debit card. And the rules say you have to want to be paid through the debit card in order for them to pay you through the debit card. So if you're being paid by a debit card and that's not how you want your money, that's also a complaint that you have a right to file. Okay, I think this brother was next.
First of all,
I want to thank the unions for this devoted work in order to defend driver rights. And thank you guys being today on our side, listening to our side, representing what it means. I do appreciate when you refer that not only one claim the resolved case, but we also want to make sure that the industry don't have to behave this way in the future. And I do appreciate that point. In doing so, I would like to recommend that the research be focused on the SNJ, where I'm working and I'm still working there. I've been working with SSJ since 2012, I believe it's in May. And since that time, I noticed four major ways they use to steal driver money. The first way is when I start making it. One day I put my printout, and in the printout, I realized that the tip is out. If the driver drives, the meter will register the main fare and the tip. So the first point, they will take the tip off, and you will have your printout with the regular fare, but no tip. That was the first point. And the second point is how they use the easy pass to double charge driver. I have a proof of some of these cases. What they do is that they will give you a printout for 1 day. On that printout, there will be 3 or 4 days easy pass. It should be only this day easy pass on the printout. But they will list 3 days easy pass on it. And if you're not careful, they will charge you like $50 or $55, 3 days easy on the printout of 1 day. I have a proof of that. And the other way is early bird and late fees charge.
What was the first one you said? Okay.
Early bird and late fee charge. And I have proof of early bird and late fee charge here too. So anytime they give you the call between 4 and 4:30, they will charge you $6. Anytime they give you the call at 4, they will charge you maybe $11 as early bird. If you come late, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, they will charge $2 per minute.
For returning.
Yeah, for returning. And I have proof. One day I came late. That was, I didn't even intend to come late, but the time changed and in the car. Once the time changed in the car timing doesn't change. You don't know that the time is changing. And I came late like 25 minutes and I got charged $25. The fourth point that I noticed it, but I didn't have time to go through is, what happened is that if you take your monthly printout from the SLS jet, your monthly printout might show, for instance, that you have made $3,000 a month. But once your annual report came, and if you compare those two, you will see that your annual credit card and your monthly printout are different. I don't know how this happened, but in my opinion, they should show the same amount. Like let's say if you drive in January, their printout say that you made $300,000 on credit card. And the annual report, the one that you sent to the IRS, on January should also show the same amount, in my opinion. But I don't know how this is different.
How is it higher or lower? Or?
It's higher. That means, let's say if their monthly printout showed 3,000, the annual report will show maybe 3,200 something. But you don't know how this happened. I don't know how it happened. But in my opinion, something is wrong there. So you can try to go on that too, taking driver annual report and compare to what the garage provide as monthly report for each month for each drivers. That's another point that I wanted to way so that you can deepen the research on that point. I was gonna do it, but I don't know, for any reason I forgot to send my annual report to the IRS. But I know something is wrong there. It shouldn't be like this. They are very, very good in that. Very, very good. I don't know how they do it, but they are very, very good. I don't remember any month that I didn't meet 2 or 3 drivers complaining about something. They don't understand how it happened. You take your monthly or your daily report, you don't have time to do the math. But they are very, very good at it. Trust me. Focus on them. That's the main point. You can find everything. SLS are very good at this. I don't know how it happened. Thank you.
Thank you for fighting for us, for the driver. I'm from SLSJ, and we want to know when we're going to get it checked out. And the second question is, I want you to take a look, Port Authority. There is 2 tax systems. There is one between 41st and 42nd. I don't know if the driver know what I'm talking about. The city put, there is like I said, there is 2 tax systems, and they put an hour on the, most of our passenger go straight, and they put a new hour. If you pick up a passenger, you have to turn left, and I don't think it's fair for us drivers. I was guilty of it. I told the judge that's not fair for us. So I want you to take a look. It's not fair for us to get a ticket over there. And the police is there waiting, just after 42nd Street on the left side, waiting for a driver. So the problem is to have point. Now you have 6 points, you have to pay $1,000 and you suspend the other stuff. That's not fair. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
So I can address the timing issue. The distribution is going to be done by a company, a distribution company that they, with our approval, are using to send the money out. So the company should have the checks. Thanks. The company should have the checks, I think, within the next week. I don't actually, or maybe 2 weeks, just to be cautious. I don't know how long their turnaround time is to send things out, but it is, it's underway, the process of doing the distribution, and we had all the data, we had all the amounts calculated, so the checks should be going to them shortly, and I think sort of to be conservative, I would think in the next 2 months, but I'm hopeful that it'll be less time than that.
And on that, just make sure that if you do believe that you are going to get money back from the SLS Jet settlement, that keep your TLC addresses up to date. That's one of the only ways we know to be able to contact you. So just make sure that your address is up to date so we know where to send the check to.
Right, and there'll be a process for if things get returned to us, get returned to the distribution company, there'll be a process for trying to track people down.
In terms of these settlements, right, they were about particular overcharges, like specific overcharges over a specific period of time. So like the brother who spoke a few minutes ago, like the early bird fee or like issues with the Easy Pass and making you pay for repairs and and I mean the late fee alone. I mean I know there are many people who they can't find parking, and SLS Jet is a mess. You can't find parking out there, so you would end up being late because they didn't have parking available to you, or because you're waiting online. But if you didn't get to the window at exactly 5 on the dot, right? They'd say you're late and they charge you the fee. So some of these things, like we found when after the settlement was announced, and we interviewed about 500 SLS Jet drivers, and we put a report together, that we're going to be submitting to the Attorney General's office, I do want to say that the settlements did not cover all the issues that we have learned about after interviewing you guys. And so we do plan to bring forward our new list of complaints and ask for an investigation, around these other overcharges as well. So Tricia, just really quick,
Yeah.
would you mind just saying the time period that the settlements covered and maybe the specific types of overcharges?
Do one of you guys want to talk about specific types while I look the data? I could have had it on the top of my head. Here, I have the data. So go ahead. This is January 1st.
SLS jet, the dates that the settlement covered was January 1st, 2011 through September 30th, 2012. And that settlement only involved the late fees that drivers were being charged. If they were improperly charged, that's what the settlement covered. So if you received late fees, that would be why you're eligible for restitution for money back. And then the settlement against Tunnel, Woodside, 28th Street, and downtown covered a couple of different types of overcharges. One of them was a shift excess time surcharge. Another one, and the time period that it covered was, I think it was January 1st, 2012 through December 31st, 2013. Shift excess time surcharges. Some of those garages began to charge drivers the 6 cents, the health and disability fee, before it was permissible. Some drivers were charged vehicle registration fees, commercial motor vehicle taxes, TLC inspection fees, and then some drivers were just flat out charged more on their lease rates than what the TLC rules allowed. So that settlement covered a variety of different fees. But something that Tricia said earlier that I just want to reiterate is that just because you were charged those fees and you see them on your receipt or your printout, it doesn't necessarily mean that you were overcharged. Just as a hypothetical, if the lease cap for a 12-hour shift is $100, okay, and you were only charged $90 by the garage for that shift, if there's other fees if there's another $5 fee on there for shift excess time surcharge, you were only charged a total of $95, and the cap is $100. So in that case, although you were charged a shift excess time surcharge, you weren't actually overcharged. Okay? Do we have
On Friedman settlement. So first, SLS Jet, everyone's been wondering what the process in terms of the timing of the checks. But I think regarding Friedman, it goes back to the point that the first member who spoke earlier made. The settlement numbers that we've seen from many of the drivers, the checks just seem really low, right? Compared to people's not only expectations, but there's a reality of how much you would really overcharge. Now we understand it's a settlement, so people aren't expecting 100% back, right, on these settlement cases. But even then, the numbers just seem really low compared to what we would have thought people had a right to get back. So I think it would be good for us just to understand, if you can share it with us, like what is the process you go through to reach a settlement number? And then how do you determine for each individual driver how much they are entitled to?
And I think let's do that, and then also at the end, because we've spoken with a number of drivers at this point who had questions about their numbers. So I think we also have a sense of what, like the two main sort of disconnects between what people are expecting and what they got have been. So maybe we can talk about that. But do you want me to pass it on to this, or do you want, or David, or however you guys want to do it?
So I think one of the the big points of confusion on the Freeman settlement goes to the point that David was just making. Because, you know, we did see a number of these improper fees appearing on receipts. And, you know, although the fees are not allowed in the rules, where the amount of the lease that was being charged is less than the lease cap, those fees aren't necessarily illegal because the lease cap wasn't hit. So the example that David gave, you know, where there's a $90 lease charge and then $5 in extra fees, if the lease cap is $100, it's not yet an overcharge. So we found that approximately a third to a fourth of the time, those extra charges actually did bring the total amount charged above the lease cap. So where somebody may be looking at their receipts saying, well, I was charged $350 every shift, and a shift excess time surcharge, you know, in terms of what the law allows, that $350 did not bring the total charge over the lease cap, but for, you know, 1/4 to 1/3 of the time. So that, I think, unfortunately, you know, made the amount that people were entitled to less than folks otherwise might have expected. And the same is true of the other charges as well, in terms of the credit card surcharge and some of the other ones that David listed. So in my conversations with drivers about the amounts, you know, they're wanting to understand why they got what they got. That seems to have resolved at least some of the confusion. Another point of confusion is the time period that the settlement covers. You know, I know there are some people who worked for Freeman Garages for years and years, and believe that they have been overcharged for that entire period of time. Unfortunately, the law only allows us to go back a certain amount of time. I'm now forgetting exactly what the date that we went back to was.
Yeah, it was January 1, 2012, right?
Right, so January 1st, 2012. So, you know, if there were overcharges before that date, that's not something that we were able to look at. So that time period is fairly limited, and that may be another reason that the amount was not quite what was expected.
What the figure was, we used our best estimate based on speaking with people and looking at the records, and came up with a number that we actually believe is what the violation was. So, the you know, people definitely talked who were expecting, you know, $10,000 or thousands of dollars, and I think that is a big difference between sort of what the law, the case looked at, and what people's expectation or understanding of what other violations may have happened or how they believe they've been wrong or maybe they have been. But the part that the case looked at was the overcharge.
And just to add on that, using David's example again, as lawyers, we're constrained by what the law is and what the rules are and what a court would decide. And so in David's example, if it's $90 and then a $5 fee, but the maximum lease cap amount is $100, the point isn't necessarily that it's a good thing to charge that extra $5 or the right thing to do. It's just if you go to court and say they're violating the $100 lease cap, a judge is going to look at that and say, well, you only paid $95. How is the 95 less than 100? So all of what lawyers do as a general matter is in the context of what the laws say, what the rules say, and what a court is going to decide if they're looking at that situation.
For people who have evidence of other overcharges besides what the case covered, right? Can we bring them forward, and then would you be able to open up new investigations?
Well, so
Is there anything in your settlement that says that for this time period, these are the only violations you can look at? Or,
right.
you know.
Our our settlement did resolve all overcharge or lease cap issues during that time period, yes. I mean, if there are other charges that brought people above lease cap, that should have come within our agreement, right? Because we just looked at charges versus lease cap. I'm hoping I'm explaining this correctly, but so it wasn't like depending on some charges were in and some charges were out. It was just did all the charges together bring you above the lease cap. So, yeah.
No, I mean, the papers you would have relied on would have been receipts provided by the garages, right?
Right, we had data from the garage that was in electronic format, and then we spoke to drivers as well, though obviously not everyone.
We spoke to drivers as well. You know, we relied on drivers who complained, whether it was to the TLC or to the Attorney General's office, and at times we had compared the documents that the drivers provided as well as the documents that the garages were providing, and they always checked out. So that wasn't a concern.
Overcharges that took place after September 30th, 2012, right? We want to make sure those are open to new investigations.
Yeah, so any violations, the ongoing violations, we definitely want to hear about, especially in the companies that we have agreements with.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I know this brother and then this brother here.
Good afternoon, guys. I really appreciate you today here in our side doing really bad job. Thank you for all the job that you are doing. I know it's not that easy dealing with all those things, and I just want to say thank you. My question is, thank you and say, show the attention to this person, they are working for us guys. I just submit documents against good time management. They overcharged me from January 2012 to February 2013 about $7,000 to $200 weekly overcharge at least. And just over lease car driving a hybrid.
And you submitted it to Attorney General or to TLC or?
No, the General Attorney Office. The General.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. We submitted, I think, in January of last year. I mean, this year in January, we submitted all my documents because I have evidence, all my receipts, in all that I really organized person. I have all my documents with me, and I submitted all the things clearly what's going on with these guys. And I just received from you guys a check like 2 weeks ago for $400. Yes, and yes, it's no matter what I was expecting it. I was thinking what is justice. And the question is if maybe what's my next step? Listen or paying attention to what you were saying, maybe some people expecting to get some money also, I don't know. And the letter that you sent me guys saying there is 2,800 drivers who have to be divided the amount, something like that. And I don't know in which proportion it must be divided this money, but in my personal case, I have that clear evidence how I've been overcharged all those weeks in a period of 1 year. I'm still working with him, but I would like to know if I will get some money else or I will have to go to fight for those rights. I feel like I have the right to get that money back. I don't know if I'm bad enough because it's not my intention to do that, but just is that the question.
So we should definitely talk specifically after this, because, like, we'll take a look at your records, and we'll look at the numbers. So let's definitely do that. There is not a plan for there to be another distribution of money. So, oh, I'm sorry, that's right. There is going to be some money that comes directly from the garage related to health and disability, the 6 cents that had been taken out. That is going to be distributed back for a certain time period, which is pretty limited, but right here, we could look it up. So it'll be, but that'll come, if you still work there, it'll come directly through your pay there. But yeah, we should talk directly. I mean, as far as what, so we can't advise people like about what they should do individually about suing or not suing, but I will say as a general matter, it's kind of hard to sue individually to try to enforce rights under the TLC. So, but let's talk specifically. I mean, if you sent the stuff to our office already, maybe you've already looked at it.
So before I had a problem, she went in the garage. I had Maradan at day 11, they took my Maradan, I was sitting down. I couldn't work, there's no job for me 2 months. Then after that, if I got complaint, they gave me another Maradan. So what happened recently, and first of all, ask the question is, I pay money for repair mechanic, and in the lease paper, they say they charge me $25 mechanic, every week mechanic. I don't need the workshop amount. So second of all, every day, every week, I go there, people, 10, 15 people, almost they have screaming for money.
Yeah.
2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, they don't get their money.
Yeah.
And for me, last week I get 3 weeks money. And I had to scream with them, and still today I went from there's no money, they have to come back. So I don't know anything like this. And another thing, dispatcher, they're very horrible, and they very bad. And somebody need to investigate on them, They don't talk, except
Yes, yes, Badger.
So, that's all.
And just in response to that, we're very concerned and aware of the situation at Woodside and the credit card payments. So, if you want to talk to us about that after, again, that's something we're looking into right now.
That's why taxi drivers are taking passengers the wrong places because you're not listening. They say if you have money problem, it's a 101 after. So my question is, it's not about money, even though we all work for SLS over here. Everybody knows the rules say that we're not supposed to touch passengers. But why, when we call 911, they take back 45 minutes to come? We need the NYPD to be more accessible to us.
Yeah.
Because I see when the bus driver called 911, they come like within 5 minutes. But when we have problems with a passenger for any reason whatsoever, they take like 45 minutes to come. And all the taxi drivers that's over here, I don't think anybody can tell me when they call 911, the passenger actually stay in the cab and wait for the cops to come. Because people got stuff to do, especially if they don't decide to pay us, of course they're just gonna walk away. And I don't know if you guys can help. Is there any way that the NYPD can be more accessible to us? Like they treat the bus driver, the MTA workers?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, brother. Thank you for raising it. Let me just say quickly, and I know the brother earlier raised the issue about turn rights. So, we had the TLC chairwoman come to the union office about a month and a half ago. We're going to be having another public meeting with the Department of Transportation and the NYPD. So, the union is working on these issues, but just for the interest of time, brothers, let's just keep the topics to what the Attorney General's office and the TLC's lease cap enforcement unit works on. So I think that'll be the best use of our time right now, while these good people are here. But if any of you have other issues you want to talk to us about, talk to any of us in the union about that right after we finish this discussion.
My question, what I like to tell TLC and General Manager, thank you for coming here, for helping us. We've been struggle everywhere. We go to lawyer, we go to police, we go to everywhere. Nobody can help you, except when those people come to make office, they started coming one. Like the animals, they toss them. Lion is lying on the wall. Nobody can do it. They take you money. They take your child support from you. Not even judge to order that. It happened to me. Blue and white group. I walk over there. Every month they take $200 for child support. And then I was paying my child support. My child support, I have 8 kids. Different women. 2 women. I have 8 kids. But different 2 women. And then New York State say, and they're going to take it for the other 4, they're not going to take it. George said, no, that's not going to happen. Those who came is his part. He was working and helping them. Nobody, for 10 years, no education, no welfare, no food stamp, no housing, no subsidy. I was working 7 days. I've been driving 24 years. Next February, next January 17, I'm going to have 24 years driving the yellow car. Jody said, no child support. $25 I have to pay. After I paid, you see the select, he started harassing from, that's my happening. Go and check. When I finish working, when I see my credit card, when I come to you, first I was strong with it. My friend said, don't trouble your credit card. When you go home to check it and come to you. If you call, I said, no. Those people are, he said, okay. Do whatever you want. So I see, when I finish, when I check my credit card, the amount I have there, when I call Microsoft, they have a tariff left over there. They didn't add that to my money. And then I left it over there. They was charging for repair. They was taking the money from my credit card. And then I left there, I went to white blue, and it had 6 and 6
Like a garage,
yeah, white and blue. And there was, you know what, last time they told, because we have a lot of people to talk about. Last time what they told me, after George closed the case, they told me you cannot walk here, the case closed, but New York State say you have to pay $200 child support, otherwise you're not going to be walking here. They fired. And then I went to Woodside Management. They was charging me $1,750. When I went to court, when I take New York State court in 2013 court, so George checked everything. Me and my wife, we living in a house. And the judge said, they now saw me good income, Mr. Tambal. Now what I'm gonna do, your income is not gonna be in a house. Only your wife income. Otherwise, they're gonna charge me 1,000 plus. But now, thanks God. Thanks God and thanks God. He helped me much. But general office, I'm pointing my finger to you. You have a lot of job to do. You gotta open office. Everybody gonna come in there. You know what they do now? They make toll. I did not pass toll. They charge me for that. When I pay that to the garage, they give it to the New York State or Bill Commercial. And then to write my name for a time. If not too long, you send 2 checks. One check, $150.90 to me. I forgot I didn't bring the letter because they were taking my money. You're the general office, right? Right? Oh, that's a TLC? Okay. My small brother was last man. He said, you are a big man now. Okay. Now, my name is Fody, F-O-D-A-Y. Okay, last name is Tambadou. And then check it in white blue group. From December 2012 to April 2013, every month they charge me $200, and that's my charge. I was paying my charge. Thank you.
Okay, so the child, just in general, like child support is not something that's within any of us.
Those of you who have not spoken yet,
Give us a chance, very short. Everyone 2-3 minutes.
so anyone who wants to speak, why don't you form a line here? If we don't get to you, then we will make sure from the union we take your information and we provide it, your question to the Attorney General's office. Only the questions related to the overcharges, okay, not other issues. No comment on other issues. Go ahead, brother.
Kevin, excellent, yes. It was taking $25 every day.
Yes, I do.
To me. I worked there 1 year, 2 months. If I spend like 1 hour for $7 or for $10, he told me, okay, you can go. We're gonna fix it. They didn't fix it. For the 25, I calculate my money, it's gonna be 9,000 and something. How? Please help me to get my money back, please.
It's not a punishment. So if taxi driver charges over $10, the grace period of the charge 500, that 1,000, next one is suspend the license. So this point, they're supposed to, their SOJ, just because they suspend his license for operate for the taxi class, because this is a crime. This is a crime. This is more than 40 years they charge overcharge day by day. So this is our money. So I request you guys, you have to look this when they start from the overcharge. I believe this 2009. So we need our money back. And thanks for everybody.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, my name is Sanjida. I'm a private car owner. I own the car, but I'm leasing the medallion. My question is, how much is a medallion lease? Because I'm paying $11 to $40 per week. Finally, I kept it. And sometimes we no open flight receipts. So my garage called me and said there is a $180 charge. I said, yes, I'm going to look for it, the receipt. I could not find the receipt, so I lost that money. So something should be done about it, because we are not allowed to touch passenger, we are not allowed to touch the credit card. So if we lose the receipt, it does not mean we lose the money.
Everyone, I'm sorry, but because it's past 4, and our guests do have some other engagements that they have to get to. But I think they can, for people who are still here, who have individual complaints, like individual cases you want to talk about, right? What we'll do is just move the conversation into the conference room. So people who have individual cases, you can speak with the attorneys one-on-one in private, which will be more productive for what we want to do. So, yeah, so anyone who has, yes, with the, yeah. But so, and anyone else is waiting online. So again, we've gotten your name and information. If you have a general question, we'll make sure to take it to them. But those of you who want to file like an individual complaint or have a question about your case today, we're just going to end the public meeting part for folks who need to go out and start driving in the night shift and to let our guests who need to go. But people will be remaining and we can meet in there and talk about your individual cases. So what we're going to do is those of you who are with SLS Jet, everyone, attention please. If you're with SLS Jet and you have questions or file a complaint, you can go into the conference room right there. Okay, Marco is going to stand at the door and let people into the conference room. If you are leasing from a Friedman garage, like Tunnel, 28th Street, Downtown Management, Woodside, we're gonna meet over there. Okay, anyone from those garages and you want to speak with one of the attorneys, you can wait for us over there. If you're leasing from any other garage or another issue, we're going to meet in this section. Okay?
There are also another 4, 5, 6 cases. I find these